Hello there, good morning. It's Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. Today I'm here at Alan Jefferies in Rotherham to have a go on BMW's new R18 Cruiser. The last Cruiser that I rode was a Ducati Diavel with forward mounted pegs from Miami down to Key West. So today in South Yorkshire and Derbyshire it's a slightly different proposition. But this is the bike. I think they look absolutely amazing. It's 340 kilos with a big 1800 boxer twin. So yeah, I'm quite excited just to see what this is like. So here we go. So that's the startup, and that really is silky smooth. So the riding modes are roll, rock, or rain. So I'm just going to leave it in roll, and yeah, let's see how this rolls. So first impressions, you just feel everything is just machined to really high quality. These little Berlin built reservoirs, even just the way that the clutch lever and the brake lever feels is pretty amazing. So then, here goes. Okay, that brake needs a good old squeeze. Okay, so first thoughts, there is just so much torque on this thing. Coming out of the dealer and just driving down the hill, just in first gear, just the lightest of touches on the throttle for a change of speed. And now it's on a dual carriageway, pottering along about 40 miles an hour. It is whisper quiet, whisper smooth. I mean, it really is quite remarkable. It's a really big bike, weighs about 340 kilos, and moving it around with the engine off, you can really tell. Having said that, now that I'm actually up and moving, the weight is so low down that I really don't feel it. Okay, so that's a bit of vibration around 3,200 revs. Seeing a bit of a wobble on the mirrors. Taking it easy still. Down into second. It's a bit of a growl as you get up through the revs, and it just feels to just pull and pull and pull. Now I know this bike only makes 90 horsepower, which might not sound like a lot. I think even my 1250 GS makes around 1250, but this bike makes 10% more torque, and it's really not meant to be ridden in the same way. And actually just to be able to stick it in fourth gear and just feel that pull and that noise that goes with it really is just that is just a delight. Okay, so that's me doing about 65 miles an hour on a dual carriageway. I would say the suspension really is rather hard. I'm feeling every bump. This is the Sheffield Parkway heading towards Sheffield, and I'm really feeling every bump as I go over it. It's 2,300 revs in sixth, and the roll-on is just, it's not fast, but you can just feel it's got that torque. Now, I don't think this bike is really meant for doing this. I don't think you'd be wanting to do a lot of distance at 70 miles an hour, certainly not without a screen. But then I guess that isn't really what it's for. It's for sunny days and just enjoying it for what it is. So one thing that has surprised me a bit by this bike is just how smooth everything is. The clutch is super smooth, there is no jerkiness. And I remember from renting a Harley a few years ago and riding around Texas, there was a real clunk in anything you did. This just, even compared to my GS, this feels smooth. The clutch is very easy to control. There is no judderiness. I mean, the engine is definitely less refined than the shift cam engine in my 1250. But in terms of riding it, it really is silky smooth. I'd also seen some complaints that the hill start assist was a little bit jerky, a bit like the first generation one in the GS. But I must admit, so far, no problems at all. And yeah, it's actually a real pleasure. The pegs seem to be quite far back compared to some of the other cruisers that I've ridden. So you're more of a sort of a sitting position without having to lift your legs up in front of you. And for me, I find that a lot more comfy. It does mean that the pegs do kind of get in the way a bit when I put my feet down, but I am finding that, you know, I can push my feet far enough out outside the pegs now that I know that that's where the pegs are. And it's so low to the ground that, you know, I'm 6'1" and I've got no trouble doing that at all. What I would say is that if you're a rider with shorter legs and you think the seat height is of interest, I would certainly say, you know, just try it and see where the pegs go and see if they get in your way or not. It does take a bit of getting used to, but I've only been riding this for about 10 minutes and so far so good. Oh, there's a sign for ice. Hopefully there won't be too much. Actually, it doesn't feel too cold. It has the BMW heated grips fitted, which is nice. So unlike the ones on my GS, which seem to only have 2 settings, which is not quite warm enough and too warm and off, this one does actually have 3 power settings. So it started off on the hottest ones, and actually just for bimbling around at these speeds, that was way too much. So I've now knocked it back down 2 notches to the first setting, and yeah, it's very comfortable. Now there is no wind protection on this bike, so I am feeling a little bit today. I think it's about 8 degrees, 9 degrees, and as you can see, a lovely misty day over the tops, going over the moors here in the Peak District. So what this bike does seem to be very good at is just gliding. It's very quiet. You can leave it in third and it will just trundle along, the slightest touch of the throttle and it will just pull you through. Around these bends I don't feel like it's struggling to turn in, but you just got to take everything very much at a cruisy pace. So as you know, I'm not really a cruiser rider. You know, I ride my GS on the tours. I thoroughly enjoy riding the CB1000R, getting out on the scrambler when I can. About the closest thing I do have is my Virago project, which is progressing very slowly, and even that was a cruiser and I'm trying to turn it into something else. That said, I definitely do see the appeal, and I've ridden a few cruisy bikes. So I've ridden a Harley Davidson in the Texas Hill Country, which was okay, but it was very hot and very loud. And after 200 miles I kind of felt like I'd done enough, and there wasn't any point where I didn't wish I was on a different bike. I've also ridden a Ducati Diavel with forward mounted pegs and very much a cruiser riding position down from Miami down to Key West, and again it was great for those sorts of roads. It was almost maybe too much, and I didn't really like the forward mounted riding pegs, the position with the forward mounted pegs. So yeah, I'd moved away from trying bikes like that, and I did ride the Indian FTR 1200 flat tracker, which I know isn't really a cruiser. It's got that same sort of big V-twin in it, but it's very much a sort of flat tracker style, much more upright, and I really did love that. I thought that was a brilliant bike. And actually, even though this looks like a cruiser, sounds like a cruiser, and doesn't have the urgency that the flat tracker did, it is without a doubt a far more refined ride, both than I thought it would be. and than both the Ducati and the Harley that I'd ridden. I think to try and compare it to something, it's a bit like an older Rolls Royce. You know, it just wafts along. You just bounce over bumps. Nothing is nothing really pushes you. You know, you're not riding on the edge, but it's just something that will just effortlessly transport you around the countryside. Now, I don't know if I'd do touring on it. It's really not made for that. It's also certainly not a track bike. I'm sure someone will take it on a track because because it's there. But for something like this, for just bimbling around the Peak District, I think it's quite a nice place to be. Having said that, the suspension is quite hard, even on this roll setting, which I believe is the softest, and I think that would take some getting used to. So it's definitely not one for rougher roads, but if you've got somewhere where, and especially if you're already a cruiser rider, I would definitely recommend looking one of these up. So I have switched it from roll into rock. I must admit I didn't look beforehand to see what difference that made. Yeah, let's give it a go. I'm just going to head up and I'm going to stop at the cafe up here. So I'm curious to know what else it does. It does seem to have slightly more urgency. I don't know if that's just my perception because I'm going uphill and giving it some, or whether it's actually a change to the engine map. But we shall see. So normally for a lot of these bends I would downshift at least one, if not two, on the quick shifter on my GS. You don't really have to here. I think once you're moving you can pretty much just leave it in third, and then it's just the tiniest of changes of the throttle to get it to do what you want. I mean, I'm not oh, there's a big tanker. I'm not pushing on really to get around these bends, but it's just yeah, the power is just there and just off it goes. I've been out riding for about an hour, and I've done some dual carriageways into Sheffield and a bit of town riding, and then I spent the last 40 minutes or so around the lanes of the Peak District. So what do I think of it? Well, it's not fast, definitely isn't fast. It just has this ability to pull. I think it's about 90 horsepower on a bike that weighs 340 kilos. So just on that alone, it doesn't sound like it would do very much, but it's also got 110 foot-pounds of torque, which is about 10% more than my GS has. And it just means that you don't really need to do much with the gears. I mean, it doesn't have a quick shifter, but to be honest, there's no point. In third gear, you can do almost anything, including pull away. And everything about it, you can tell it's just been designed to be exactly what it is. There's things that don't look like they're borrowed from anything else. Everything from the indicators to the exposed drive shaft, which is apparently no more dangerous than a chain. Then it has these slightly odd looking slash cut exhausts, which are very thin at the back and sort of bulbous through the middle. I think they're probably in a what I don't like about it. So I find the brakes are still a bit soft, a bit lacking stopping force compared to my GS. I think the pegs are in a slightly odd place, so I could certainly get used to that. So I'm not sure if the looks would be for everyone. These massive 1800cc stick-out cylinders either side do look quite special. They keep the centre of gravity very low, but I think that's probably going to be a love-hate thing. I quite like them, but then I have a GS, so you know that says a lot about my taste. You do get quite a lot of toys on it. It's got heated grips, as I mentioned, with 3 different settings. It's got riding modes, rock, roll and rain. Mainly been in roll and rock so far. Can't tell a huge amount between them, maybe a little sharper throttle response in rock. It's also got LED running lights. It's got keyless ignition. It does have an electric reverse gear, which I haven't dared use yet, but apparently it can reverse the starter motor, and given that it's 340 kilos, maybe that's not such a terrible thing. It's also, I think, the best part of 20 grand, which is a lot of money for something that's really going to be a toy. I don't know if you'd be able to go touring on this. I did hear there was a bagger in the works, which may be more practical for that. It's certainly not one for the windy country lanes, and you definitely can't take it off-road. But I think if cruisers are your thing, we've always fancied a cruiser, and you just want something a little bit more refined. I think this is a really good bike. Now, whether you've got deep enough pockets to afford it, each to their own. But yeah, it's a really interesting bike. I really like what BMW have done. Ever since I saw the concept at EICMA, I was kind of slightly interested. But to be able to ride it for a day, to take it out, I mean, a big thanks to the guys at Jefferies in Rotherham for letting me take out their demo bike. It's not been a perfect day for it, but the sun is starting to come out a bit now, so I am quite looking forward to my ride. So one thing I do notice, and I get this on my GS as well, is you get a bit of body roll when you rev it, and this is just that much more pronounced just as that flywheel spins up. Not a problem really. In fact, once you're used to it, it's kind of reassuring, but nevertheless it is that much more pronounced on this 1800. So for those of you who know this part of the Peak District, this is Winnats, which is the road that runs down from the tops heading east down into Castleton. So it's as good a test of brakes as any. It's an interesting biking road, mainly because it's just full of cars, plenty of twisty bends. It's normally more fun going up than it is down, but given that I think I need to understand how effective these brakes are on this 340 kilo bike, I think it'll be an interesting descent. It's great to see all the paragliders up there above the hillside as well. Well, one thing I certainly don't get on my GS is that if I just leave it in first, there's enough engine braking just to slow me down, and I think I'm actually slowing in first on this, such as the engine braking that's available, which makes things like this just a breeze, if I'm honest. Let me try it in second, see what second does. Second's barely at tick over. It will run on a little bit, but it really doesn't feel like it's out of control at all, even with the bends that are on down here. The ride harshness is still very obvious. I really do feel every bump that I'm going over, and if anything, for Peak District riding, that would probably be the thing that would put me off more than anything. It's a cyclist with a good idea. So right now I'm just climbing on the road out of Hathersage, and I've taken a slight detour to head back to take this road which goes from Hathersage up towards the bridge at Burbage. Now the reason I've taken this is because this is where I normally get to tell how good a bike suspension is. If it's good, you just waft over it. If it's not, you feel every little bump in the road, and because I had my doubts earlier about this and the suspension for the Peak District, I thought I would give it a try, and as you can probably hear from my voice, this is 30 miles an hour and it is rocking me around all over the place. Now this is set to the rock riding mode, so I am going to switch that to, not to rain, oops, I'll switch that back to roll. See if that smoothens it out at all. Well, I don't know if this actually has electronic suspension, but if it does, it's not making the slightest bit of difference. I can feel my voice just shaking as I go over this, and every little bump in the road. And this is at 30 miles an hour. I'm not flying up here at a furious rate of knots. And yeah, it is pretty bumpy. This is not as comfortable as I feel a bike like this, at this price point should be. You know, this is not a particularly bumpy road. I mean, it is bumpy for around here and it's a useful test, but I think the last bike that I came up here on that was as uncomfortable, though for different reasons, was the Royal Enfield Interceptor, a bike which I loved, and I thought, you know what, it's made to a price, so they have to economise somewhere, and the suspension was certainly one of them. But actually feeling how this feels coming up here, I think for country lanes in general, unless it's a really nice surface, your back and your backside are really gonna feel every bump that you go over. So I've only been riding on this road for about 2 or 3 minutes, and actually already I can feel it in my neck, which is probably not a good sign, which is a shame. So I'm just coming to the end of my test ride now. I think I've done just over 100 miles, and I've been out for about 3 hours, and it really has been a lot of fun. I think it's a stunning looking bike. It might not be to everyone's taste, but the attention to detail is probably second to none. I would say the seat is, I am feeling it now, and I've been out for 3.5 hours. I don't think spending a whole day on this bike would be particularly comfortable, but then again, I don't really think it's designed for that. Would I buy one? At this stage in my life, probably not. I'm not sure what I'd use it for, and for that price I think I could have 2 or 3 of something else. Having said that, I do think it is an exceptional piece of engineering, and I think if I was looking for a cruiser, this would undoubtedly be on my list. So I'll just drop it back and then record some final thoughts, and then I'm done. Right then, so that's me all done. So that was really a lot of fun. I've been out for about 3.5 hours, done just over 100 miles, and I've been really impressed with the R18. Is it for me? I don't think so, at least not yet. But it really is a brilliant bike. It's great fun to ride. If you just want to cruise around, which I think is exactly what it's designed for, it really is a fabulous piece of machinery. Everywhere I stopped I got a lot of interest, and big thanks to the guys at Jefferies for letting me take their demonstrator out for a whole afternoon. It's been great to be able to ride it on dual carriageways through the city of Sheffield, and then a long run out around the peaks. So yeah, it's been really good fun, and now I can get on my GS and ride home.